In Samoa, we have a saying that guides a lot of our culture, and it says, "Ole ale le pule I le tautua," and that means the path to leadership is service. Now, I guess I'll go ahead and do this. I could talk over this, but it's so ingrained in our culture that back in the day, to serve, you had to go through a process of what we call getting the tatau. This song that is playing is an old proverb song that we sing all the time about getting the tatau. If you know, tatau is the word that the word tattoo originated from. Sailors that went through the islands couldn't pronounce tatau, and so they call it tattoo. And that's where they're European sailors, right, that did that. It's a process that you go through. It takes about 50 hours, a lot of pain that you go through, people stretching your skin, tapping it on you, and just tapping all of that pain into you until it becomes permanent. Once you go through that, then you are now ready to lead your family, your community, and the world as Matai. As Matai. So this right here is my grandfather, who represents Tautua in my family, Imo Tuiana Tavau Tuala Tamalalangi, and he served in many capacities, especially within our church, for over 40 years, and migrated our family from there to Hawaii, from Hawaii to Compton, California to Independence, Missouri, and that's where we reside. And I knew him until he died when he was 110 years old. But service is a key, 110. So service is a key part of our family. And so that path to service, I just kind of want to share you guys my own sort of path. It starts all with my family. I'm number 12 of 14 brothers and sisters. I'm gonna have to read this part to kind of help me with it. Of course I remember it, but 12 of 14 brothers and sisters, been homeless, ate out of trash cans. Some days the trash can next door, so the dumpster next door at the bakery, we used to call that the cookie jar. We'd go over there and just get it when they throw out the expired food. We'd go get it, and that's what we would eat. Some days we'd have 10 children to feed, but only 8 plates of food. So what we would do is we put down 10 plates, 2 empty plates, and we put on the music and play musical food chairs. Walk around until the music stopped, sit down, and whatever's on your plate, you eat that until the music starts again, and you go. If you sit down, you have an empty plate, or you just watch everybody else eat until it's your turn. And so that's kind of things, the way that we kind of like dealt with life. We tried to make things fun as we went through that. I saw my first gang-related killing when I was 9. My brother beat up some white kid, racist kid in high school. That kid came on and did a drive-by shooting at my brother's house. The next week came and did a drive-by shooting at our house. Didn't hit anybody. And then the following week, when I was visiting my brother, walking out of the door, they saw me. They were about to do a drive-by shooting, but they chickened out and drove off. I tried to chase them, but I realized I don't have a gun. So the only reason why I graduated high school was because of free lunch. If I didn't go to school, I didn't have any food to eat. And so I was perfect attendance as much as possible, unless I got suspended from school. Then I did my best to get ISS, in-school suspension, so at least I could eat something. When my senior year, when the counselors come to your school and they start talking to you about college and education and enrolling, that was far from my mind. I didn't even give it a second thought. I was thinking more about just going on a mission, like my grandfather, and serving. And so I did. I went on a mission. I went out to Guatemala. That's where I took this picture out in the mountains of Guatemala among the indigenous people. And it was there that I learned how to help people make and keep small and simple commitments that created big changes in their lives. So in those mountains, climbing those mountains day after day, I learned a lot, especially from those people that I was serving. And so
I was gonna say, these are your siblings?
yes, that's all my family. That's all my brothers and sisters, and that's my mother and my father. So yeah, they're the ones that I grew up with. They're the only ones that have shared the experience that I have shared growing up. You ever been beat by a 230-pound Samoan man? Well, I have since I was the age of 5, right? And they're the only ones that were there through that and went through that with me, and we're always there to help each other cope. How did my parents take care of us or raise us? We did it. They did. The older ones took care of the other ones. These older two, they would work many hours during the day, and they helped buy all the food. They would go to dumpsters, get food for us to feed us. My sisters were sort of my mothers. They kind of helped nurture me whenever I was struggling, whatever. They're the ones that helped me out. My mom, great mother, did the best that she could. But there's 13 kids. It's hard to keep track, right, Joey? Like when you're here and you're trying to count how many of us are, you're like 10, right? That was every single trip to the grocery store, right? There was one time my mom didn't even know I was gone until she saw me on TV, lost child. I ran away 4 times before I was 4. The police knew me very well. They knew me as Michael Torres because I didn't know how to say my name that well. I always knew how to go to the park. I didn't know how to come back home. With that, when I came back from my mission, one of my mentors sat me down and said, "You need to go to BYU Hawaii." And I was like, "What? BYU? Like the average ACT score is 24. Mine is 17. I have no chance." But I did what he said, and by God's grace, I got in. I got lucky. I don't know. Maybe somebody messed up the paperwork or whatever. But I got into the school. Started living my dreams. Started working at the Polynesian Culture Center. Climbing coconut trees, doing fine art dances. These were things that I watched growing up, and I was really excited about doing growing up. But never lived on the island, right? And so there, I was able to do that and experience that. And the most important thing is I met my wife. That's our first date. I pulled out all the stops on the first date, and it worked. It worked. I chased her around. She worked at the bookstore. I would sit over by the bookstore at different paths along the way home, and I would just wait for her to come, and I would talk to her along the way. So I did a lot of things like that. 2 months later, we sat down and wrote our vision board. 2010 right there, we wrote down our next 30 years. And me, I'm an activator, so I like to activate goals into reality. So once we wrote that down, we started executing it. Got married, started having kids, graduated together from BYU, went to Micronesia, my first experience in student affairs, working over there, went and got a master's degree at BYU, got a full ride scholarship at the sociology program here at UNL, and I came here, did the courses, passed the comprehensive exams, and then in 2019, I defended my dissertation proposal, and I was ready to finish the dissertation within the next year. I went home for Christmas, had an amazing Christmas with all my family, especially with my sister Bridget, my oldest sister. She was there during all the hard times, all these things that I went through. She was there, she was the one with me. When I went on my mission, she came out with her low-income job, paid for tickets for her and her daughter to come, pick me up from Guatemala, spent a week out there with me. She was the one that wrote me every single day, all the time. When I got married, she was the one that was with me, and it was just an amazing time. Best day of my life with my sister. And then the next day, she jumped off a bridge. That broke me. How could I pursue my dream without her cheering along? She was the strongest person that I knew. How could I pursue my dreams if she can't make it? How can I? So I gave up. I gave up on life. I gave up on my wife. I gave up on my kids. I gave up on God. I gave up on my PhD program. I pulled out and I sat on the couch for 128 weeks. 16 hours a day on the phone, Netflix, YouTube, social media, and I gave into my addictions. I gave into my fears. I gave into my self-doubts. I gave into my depression, and I just stayed there for 128 weeks. Somehow I lucked into this job. Joey hired me. I don't know what he saw in me, but he did. He hired me, and guess what? I did the bare minimum when I started. Sorry about that, but I did the bare minimum. I did the text. I sent the text out when we needed to, and I got one text back from my manager Elijah here. I need help. Came to my office, and something sparked inside of me as I was helping him out. But after I kind of pushed that to the side, I was like, how can I help this kid? I can't even help myself. I'm a failure. I'm useless. I can't help these kids. I can't even take a shower. I'm sorry, y'all, if I showed up to work all smelly and dusty, that's the way I was. Things was just hard for me. You guys always wonder where I went after meetings. I went to the nearest couch and I sat there and laid down as much as I could, as much as possible. But as I was helping these kids, my wife kept on bugging me. I'll go take a shower, I'll go do this, or keep on bugging me and keep on pushing me and tell me, to do my things, to do these things. Try again. Go do your dissertation. I tried everything that I could at that time to get jobs, Arizona, other places, everywhere else. But my wife kept on saying, we're not going anywhere until you graduate with your PhD. Like, we need you. Like, it's hard being poor. We need you. Like, you gotta do better. Your kids are looking at you. Like, you gotta do this. And so I made the choice. I made a decision one day. I'm just gonna put 7 days together. Because I counted up. That's how I know I have 128 weeks. I counted up because I keep a journal. And so I looked at my journal and I saw the 128 weeks I could not put together 3 or 4 consecutive successful days. So I made a goal. I'm gonna put 7 days together just to do the best I can. And I wake up in the morning, immediately do 10 push-ups because I avoided hard things. So I was just like, okay, I'll just do 10 push-ups. That's simple, I can do that. 10 push-ups, and I go on a walk, and I go listen to motivational speeches or YouTube videos about how to process your emotions and mental health and those sort of things. And on that first day, I changed all my algorithms. I had to just go through and just delete all my algorithms that they was sending me to my addictions or sending me to distract me. And I started putting these things, and other things were motivating me, right? By day 4, I was in the parking lot. I was in the parking lot just jamming out to Miley Cyrus. And I was just there, just saying to myself, I can almost see it. That dream I'm dreaming, that dream that I was chasing, but there's a voice inside my head saying, you'll never reach it. Every step I was taking, every move that I was making, I felt lost with no direction because I had nothing I was going towards. My faith was shaken. But I gotta keep trying. Those words really soak into me. And I started just seeing with them, there's always gonna be another mountain. I'm always gonna wanna make it move. It's always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes I have to lose. It ain't about how fast I get there. It ain't about what's on the other side. It's the climb. Climbing out of my bed, climbing out of my fears, climbing out of my anxieties, climbing out of my self-doubts, climbing out of my depression every single day so that I can climb this mountain. And as I was doing that, I would go and see these students and I'd feel the same way. And by the end of that song, I'm just sitting there in the parking lot. I was just screaming, holding onto the wheel, and I was just screaming, I can, I will, I must get this PhD. I must for my wife, I must for my kids. It's just too hard. I can't do this. I must. I can. I will. I must help these kids that are at their mountains. I must help them climb. I must help them get over their self-doubts, their fears and everything. And so as I was working with these students, I would do that. And every time that I'm working with them, I feel them and I understand. I say, I know it's hard. I know it's hard what you're going through. I know what you're feeling. Dang it, it's hard. I know it's hard to reach out to your teachers. I know it's hard to go to class. I know it's hard to CAPS. But you know what's even harder? Being poor, being in poverty, being first generation student, it's hard. I know it's hard. So hard, my sister couldn't survive it. I don't know if I can survive another 10 years of it. But you know what? You gotta choose your heart. This is something my wife would always tell me. Mike, you can choose your heart. I know your dissertation is hard. I know working is hard, but being poor is hard. It's even harder. I know that for a fact, right? And so, when I'm working with these students, I try to help remind them of that. And every day is the best day for me because I'm climbing out as I'm helping these kids climb. I start feeling like I could contribute to these kids' lives because they were contributing to mine. And so through this, I've developed sort of a system of how to help these students make and keep commitments, small and simple commitments. Now, when it comes to it, you have two sort of mindsets. You could have a deficit mindset or you could have a validation mindset, right? And so I wish my man Michael was here because I was gonna just show him the first mindset, which is the Dave Ramsey framework. It really is. I made this specifically for Michael and he's not here. But I recorded this video, you guys can share. You guys can share this video with him, so I'll share it with him. But it's a Dave Ramsey mindset that a lot of people have. It's a deficit mindset. right? That in cases of emergency, like these students, you gotta climb your own. Like you gotta do it on your own. And in case of emergency, reach out to me, right? Like pay your debts, pay your student fees, pay that, and get a college degree, and hopefully you can build wealth. But that's the way that they do it, many people operate on this campus or in predominantly white institutions that, hey, these kids that can't make the climb, well, that's on them, right? But I use a validation mindset, which is these steps that I'm gonna kind of help teach you guys today. These are the steps that we're gonna give and do this. And as I was listening to you all last week when you guys were giving advice to those people, I realized you guys are the experts at this. So I have these papers right here in front of you. I want you to grab that paper, move the stuff out of your way, grab these papers that are in front of you, and we're gonna go through these steps. Now, as I go through these steps, I'm gonna share what I've learned on this journey, on all my experience of helping people make and keep small and simple commitments, and these students particularly, but you guys are experts at this. I want you guys to write down these things as well. So here's the process, what it is. Invite, testify, promise, follow up, validate, and challenge. Each of those have their statements. It's something very simple. Hey, I invite you to send an email to your teacher. Will you send an email to your teacher? I know if you do, you'll feel better. I know they'll respond. I promise you that if you do send it out to the teacher, then you'll find out an answer from them and you'll feel better. You're developing more self-confidence as you're doing that. And then you just follow up, when can we meet, to find out how you do, validate, and then challenge them. So we're gonna go through these steps today, and then at the end, I'm gonna have you guys kind of practice with each other, using something with that as well. And I'm gonna invite you guys at the end to do my own sort of challenge. Does that make sense? So we're gonna start off with this first one, invite. So invitations are a lot like seeds, okay? You can count the seeds in an apple, but you can't count the apples in a seed. All right, let me say that again. You can count the seeds, right? That apple has 2 seeds, but you can't count the apples in 1 seed. You don't know what seed is gonna grow, which one is not. A lot of seeds you're gonna throw out there, a lot of invitations, and a lot of times they're not gonna do it. But it only takes that one seed, that one invitation for them to follow up, and you get them to that next level. And then you're walking them through these changes. So every single time you make an invitation to a student, you're inviting them to make changes in their lives that's gonna lead to them being able to achieve their dreams. Does that make sense? So I have do's and don'ts here that I'm gonna go over, but I want you to take your pen as you're going through this and write some of your own do's and don'ts that come up in your mind, right? Like you guys have done this. When we were talking about last week, these are all things that you all do. You're all very good at it. A framework really just frames the work that you're doing, right? So that's all I'm doing, is just framing the work and how to help you how to do it. So when you do give an invitation, don't use wishy-washy words. Don't say would you, could you, or can you, because they will respond in kind. Hey, would you email your teacher? I would, I could, I can. You know what I mean? If you do that, they will respond with the same words they're using. So use will you. Use words that are direct and clear as possible. Right? Be direct as clear as possible. Use the WWW method, right? Who, what, where, when. Use that method to help them know what to do. Okay? Don't make complex invitations. Don't give more than 2 or 3 invitations. The students aren't going to remember a lot when they leave out of your office. They need to just remember that one thing, that one simple thing that will help them, that they're going to work on, right? And if you do give 2 or more invitations, 2 or 3, make sure that they're interrelated or sequential, right? So that one leads to the next. Like, hey, I invite you to write an email and then send it to the teacher, right? Something sort of like that. But make sure that's sequential and interrelated, right? And make sure when you do it, extend a simple invitation that is easy to do. KISS. Keep it simply simple. Make them an invitation they can't refuse, right? And if you want to make it so simple that it's just like, oh, I could do that, right? So if they give an excuse, that's good, because they're identifying barriers before it happens. You don't have to wait till the next meeting to find out why they couldn't do something. So that's okay. It's good to help have them give you excuses. I can't. Oh, I can't. I can't study tonight because I'm working. Okay, cool. Let's find out the next day. Does that make sense? So that's the invitation, is just asking them, will you do certain things? All right. So I want you guys to sort of think, if there's any ideas that come up to your mind, some sort of method that you use, that would be great. The next step after you invite, you want to testify, and you want to tell them what you know. Right? Knowledge is power. That really is true. Tell them what you know. When you invite somebody and you tell them what you know, it kind of it makes you the expert, right? So when you do it, when you do say something, you don't make stuff up, right? Don't make up what you know. Don't make up something that you haven't done yourself. You guys have all been to college, so you guys do know what you're doing. You guys have experience. So when you do that, share your personal experiences, share your expertise, and share how you came to know what you know, right, with the students. Just something, you know, when I had an assignment that I missed, yeah, like it was hard for me, but I did send it out, and I got, you know, the teacher, wrote back to me. Does that make sense? So kind of sharing your experience, that kind of motivates them. It motivates them to be like, okay, yeah, she knows what you're talking about. Like, okay, I can do it. I'm more willing to do it. So that's the next step, telling them what you know. You're a witness, right? You're witnessing them things that you know that are true, that can help you. And especially if you're a first-gen student, like that, they connect with that. So when you tell them things that you know, these are things they didn't know, right? So there's a lot of power in your knowledge. Remember that you have power. When you tell something that you know, it hits different. Especially in something that you experience, like it hits different when you tell these kids, oh, man, I know that you can do, I know this. Does that make sense? So after you do that, I know. So first, hey, will you do this? I know that if you do this, ... Does that make sense? Very simple. The next thing, after you tell them what you know, then you promise them. You promise them whatever outcomes that what are the consequences of that action? Does that make sense? So like, hey, here's the things that I don't want you to do. I don't want you to make up invitations, right? Don't make up things on the fly. Don't make up promises that you don't know happen. Don't promise something that you haven't seen in your own life, right? If you haven't seen it, then don't talk about it. Or, you can talk about it if there's someone close to you, right? Or you know somebody that has done that. Does that make sense? So you can promise something that you've seen or somebody that you know, right? Don't guarantee something that is not guaranteeable. If you do this, you're going to get a good grade. You're going to get out of probation. You can't guarantee that, right? But you can guarantee you're going to, hey, if you do this, the teacher will respond. That's right. Does that make sense? When I said, I know that if you send out the teacher, I promise you the teacher's going to respond, and you're going to know, and you're going to have more control in your life, because then you're going to know what to do. Does that make sense? So make simple promises. Guarantee what you know will happen. This is often something simple and very obvious, but it's not as obvious to them. When you tell somebody a promise, it motivates them to want to do it. So every time you're doing an invitation, you tell them that knowledge and that promise are very key, because those give those students motivation to actually keep that commitment, right? And then promise something that has happened in your own life, and I kind of talked about that with knowledge as well, right? Don't promise anything that you haven't seen in your own life. And when you do promise something that happens in your life, I'll tell you, it has power. It hits them in their heart, in their soul. When you tell them that, something from your life, man, I promise you, man, I know it's hard, but if you get back and keep on working on your dream, you're gonna feel motivated, right? I know it's hard, but you can do this. So you promise. After you promise, the next step then is to follow up. Y'all are experts at this, following up. Don't finish an appointment without scheduling a follow-up call, text, email appointment. And when you do, ask them when they want you to follow up. Set a specific date. Ask what works best for them. Right? I have one student. He doesn't look at his texts, so texting him just doesn't work. So I text his friend, right? His friend's talking to him, so that works. Does that make sense? So set up something that works best for them, and not just what works best for you. So follow up. I think you guys are pretty expert on this, so I don't want to take too much time. Right, so once again, will you do this? I know that if you do this, this will happen. I promise you that if you do this, these are the things that you're going to see. So when can I follow up on this? Maybe next week? No? Okay, cool. Then we schedule it. So when you follow up, you can validate after you set up the follow up, and you can validate also, when they come back, right? So there's 2 times that you can validate. So there's 2 results that happens whenever you extend an invitation. Either they do it or they don't do it, right? So if they do it, don't forget to congratulate, appreciate, and validate. Really really blunt. I was like, man, that is great. Fist pumps, like I always do. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like give them a high five, do those things. Feel excited about it. Like you probably do feel excited about it, right? So express that excitement that you have, but remind them how hard it was when they first made the invitation. That makes sense? Remember when you thought this was so difficult and so hard, and like you thought it was impossible, and now you did it? Like you did that. And so you validate that. So when it comes to validation, I want you to treat a student what they could be. If you treat a student as they are, they'll remain as they are. If you treat them as they could be, they will become as they should be, right? So that's why I talked about this a little bit last week. When your student is sitting there and you're giving an invitation, envision them in their graduation gown. That's going to impact the way that you talk about them, that you talk to them. Like, look, you got this. I know you can. Like you can do this. Like you got this. Does that make sense? So envision that, and that will help you kind of know how to talk to them. Sometimes you just have to talk to them and help them know that. Like when I was struggling, when I was at my bottom, my wife would just talk to me about what she saw in me. You're great. Like you're gonna be amazing. You're gonna do this. You are great, Michael. You can. And her doing that was validation to me. So do that same thing with them. See what they don't see. They don't see it. That's when I was looking at that 128 weeks, I didn't see that I could be successful. So it's your job to see what they don't see. See them in that gown. They don't see themselves in that gown at that time. So describe to them the person that you see. That helps them, right? So this is all backed by research. So I'm a sociology education. Researchers went into a school, they went to teachers, they gave them a list of all the good students. They came back a year later, and guess what happened? All those good students, good grades, right? Very obvious. But guess what? That list, random list. They weren't good students. It was just a random list of names. You know what was different? It wasn't the student, it was the teacher. The teacher thought they were good students, so they treated them like good students. And when they were treated like good students, they responded as good students. They would give the students more assignments, extra time. They would encourage them. They'd give them the next challenge. They would challenge them and say, oh yeah, I know that you're a good student. Does that make sense? So that's gonna be the same thing with you. You have to look at them in their graduation gown, and that's gonna change the way that you validate them and the invitations that you give, right? And so when they don't do it, then don't hate, validate, right? Don't guilt trip, but do ask them what happened. So a lot of times we try to get we get a little bit uncomfortable asking them what happened, whatever. No, don't escape that. Ask them, hey, what happened? Maybe use an uplifting tone. I think you guys talked about that a little bit last week. Oh man, what happened? Dang, you know what I mean? Let them explain. Let them explain what happened. That will help you identify barriers, but it also provides accountability for them. So help them to identify those barriers, come up with simpler solutions, and then validate their assets, traits, religion, beliefs, or whatever that you know about them. So like I had one student that came to my office, he was Muslim. And he just came down, the previous day was the end of Ramadan, where they fast for 30 days, and they fast all the time. And he was tired. He came into my office, and he didn't, he missed an assignment. He didn't want to email his teacher. So I went through the process with him, invited him, told him what I knew. I promised him that if he did, he'd feel better. The next meeting when he came back, he was like excited. He was like, the teacher actually, she gave me my whole 12% grade back. He's really excited and all that. And so I just started validating. I was like, you know what? You know why that happened? He's like, oh, because you helped me. I was like, nah, because your belief. That 30 days of fasting, Ramadan, Allah blessed you. Like I validated his, I don't need to believe what he believes, but I validated his beliefs because I'm not there. His beliefs will always be there. Does that make sense? So validate what they believe, what their values are, what their traits are. That all comes with your first interview, right? When you're getting to know them, you're finding out their traits and things that they are. So validate those things and use that. Now the last step I want you to do is to challenge them. Challenge them with the next step. It's the next invitation. You can, you will, you must. Say that to them. You know what I mean? You can do this. You will do it. You must do it. But give them an invitation that is hard. So we grow by doing hard, difficult things. When you don't challenge your students, you're not helping them grow. So don't you know what I mean? Make it, they're going to tell you it's difficult. Yes, I understand it's difficult, but you got to. You must. because it's hard. You choose your hard, right? It's hard to do the assignment, but it's hard to be poor. It's harder to be a first generation student. Once you're finished with this, you're next generation. They're not first generation students. You're making this easier for them. Does that make sense? So explain to them, yes, it's hard now, but you gotta do this. A lot of times we don't try to give them, we don't try to challenge them, but we must challenge them. And you do that by saying you can, you will, or you must do these things. So don't forget to build on their assets. Don't accept excuses. Oh, I can't do this. Okay, those excuses, it's just a barrier. Okay, let's find, you know what I mean? Help them walk in front. That's where that quote I got from her desk. Everything is figure outable, right? That's what you do. Don't accept excuses. Figure it out. Help them figure it out. Help them have that sort of mindset that everything is figure outable. And then hold them accountable. Wow, you're better than this. Like, I know you can. You should do this. Like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? But that definitely happens after you build that rapport, right? Once you build that rapport, though, don't just stop there. Don't just stop there. Hold them accountable. Be that person that's going to challenge them. Okay? So those are the steps that we go through. So now I'm just going to have you guys pair up. Yeah, we have two pairs. So we have 2, 4. Yeah, we'll have you guys pair up. And I want you guys to go through using the steps with something simple. Something simple, so as I send an email or whatever you can think of. So I want you guys to go ahead and turn to each other and then practice just extending an invitation, saying what you know, promise, follow up, validate, and then challenge. All right, time's yours.
Do you have an odd number? Somebody gonna be my partner.
Yep. Okay.
No one likes a cat.